show where I showcase some of the amazing women speakers that are available, and try to shift the stats from 30% women speakers to 50%. And I've just discovered recently only 15% of panels have got women on them, or panels have only got 15% women. Whatever way you look at it, we need to get more women on. So I'm absolutely delighted to have my guest today, Trena, who I met on Tuesday at our She's the Boss lunch. Trena is absolutely amazing, and I'm going to start off, Trena, by getting you to introduce yourself. Tell us about your topic and why you like to talk about that topic.
Thanks, Jules, and it's really great to be here, and it was really terrific meeting you on Tuesday. What a fantastic lunch that was.
Oh, thank you.
So I am an international growth specialist.
Right.
I work with Australian companies and, in fact, companies all over the globe to launch internationally. The reason I got into this business was because I was living and working in New York City for a number of years. And when I returned to Australia, I was still working in corporate, but I was being asked by business leaders to connect them into my New York network.
Right.
And it was an amazing experience being able to do those connections. And that generated into my business 10 years ago. So we're celebrating our 10-year anniversary. Actually,
congratulations. That's amazing. Oh my gosh, today. And tell me, is it just focusing on America, or do you take people into other countries now as well? Is it kind of teaching the principles? Or
it is. Yeah, so we've really focused on America for the last, say, 9 years.
Right.
But in the last 12 months, so two things have happened. One is I launched my book, or published my book.
Tell everybody the name.
Yeah, Decoding Global Growth, How Successful Companies Go International.
Okay.
And as I was writing the book, one of the editors, Andrew, said to me, you know, what you're putting together here is not only for Australian companies going into the United States. You really need to shift the messaging because it's for any business leader going into any market around the world.
I like it.
And so that was step number one.
Yeah.
Step number two was then, how do I scale this even bigger than my book? Of course, everyone can go online and buy my book around the world. It's translated into I don't know how many languages now. But how can I even scale it bigger, make the processes and the frameworks and the templates available even more broadly? So my book is now converted into an online academy.
Oh, I love it.
And we're actually in the process of launching that. So we've got some courses now available. They start in January. And it's, again, for any business leader looking to go into any market.
So could they be, let me just clarify, is that people running their own businesses or people in corporate who might want to take their company in, or both? It doesn't really matter.
It really doesn't matter. So the frameworks that I've used for early stage scale ups for founder owned businesses.
Okay.
I've also worked with ASX listed companies. So big Australian companies that are looking to go global. So the frameworks work for both.
Right. And from that, you've developed a keynote in this particular area, I'm guessing.
Yes. So it's been sort of a side gig, if you like, with the business. I didn't set up to be a speaker when I first started business.
Often happens.
And actually, there's a bit of a story about that because which I'm happy to share a little bit.
Oh, please do.
But so my business was very much, consulting, helping with the connections, making sure businesses are ready to go global because most are not. Putting together go-to-market strategies. And then I was being flown before the pandemic into New York to do business development.
In what particular industry? Can you share that with us?
Yeah, so when we started, my corporate background was financial services and corporate travel.
Yeah.
And so my business was very much focused on fintech, regtech, insurtech, B2B SaaS businesses. But Jules, over the years, I've worked with professional service companies, retail companies. I secured Australia's first exhibition at the Smithsonian Museum in Washington, DC.
Oh my God, what a woman.
So, it's been a heck of a journey. I've had so much fun with all my businesses, all my clients that I work with. So we don't do space and we don't do defence. So they're the two categories or industries that we don't work within.
But other than that, it's kind of open slather for anybody that would like to go global and understand what's required, I guess, from a compliance point of view, but also how to make those connections. Is that?
It is, yeah. So we start with we like to start with what we call our global scalability audit. So
Right.
that is
Are
really
you ready?
digging deep on a business to make sure they've got all the foundational pieces in place.
Yeah.
We've developed that audit over the 10 years. So it's proprietary, it's highly detailed. So that's where we like to start. And I did have one customer that did the audit in 2018, and it was just all red flags.
Right.
And so I said to him and his board, don't go to the US, you're not ready, you will save a lot of time and effort if you stay here, invest in the business, get your foundational pieces in place.
Yeah.
And then they came back to me, the CEO came back to me in 2023, and he said, we're ready to be audited again. So we did the audit again, and they went flying colours, and they're now in the US and the UK. So
that's amazing. And I think for any business that wants to grow, it's kind of be careful what you wish for, because you hear about it with retail brands going into supermarkets. If you're not ready, you can stuff up that opportunity and even bring your business down. And I know people that bring people into India, and you're saying America, these are huge markets. If you're not ready to be able to service those markets, I guess, then you may miss the opportunity forever if you stuff it up the first time.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You can damage your brand very, very quickly, as you go international, and especially the US market. They are forgiving, although I will say that. And there are a couple of organizations that have openly talked about how they went in first, they didn't do their research, they didn't understand the market, and they withdrew. And then they went into their audit, the global, the go-to-market strategy. They really did their research. They did reconnaissance trips to do deep research, understand, and they've launched, and they're now successful. So it's really, really important for your business to be ready, but for you to know the market that you're going into. And to your point, Jules, the US is 320 million people. The states, some of the states are the equivalent of GDPs of big countries around the world. California and the UK have similar GDPs.
It's amazing,
so going into California is like going into the UK. So be mindful of the size of the state in the US, and India and other countries around the world is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. So as a result of that, and you've said you like to work across all industries except for space and defense, what about the size of the audience? If you're talking, do you prefer intimate, smaller groups? Do you like a room full of 1,000 people? What's your preference as a speaker?
I'm actually comfortable with both.
Okay,
I have, I've been on stage in London. There was 100 people in New York. There was only 50 people in Sydney. I think the biggest event was 500 people.
Right.
So I'm actually comfortable with any size of audience. Yeah.
Okay, and I presume I guess it doesn't really matter whether they're business owners or whether they're business leaders. It doesn't really matter, because you're able to help with both of them. So tell us a little bit, you've told me a little bit about your background, but can you tell me what it was that made you decide to move into speaking? How did that actually happen? Was there a moment where you were asked to get up on stage, or was it part of a strategy? Tell me a bit more about that.
It wasn't, well, it was and was not part of a strategy. And it goes back to when I was in corporate, a few decades ago. Can I say that?
You don't look old enough.
So what was happening with me is that I was doing presentations as part of my corporate job, presenting to corporate partners in one of the banks I was working in. And I was terribly, terribly nervous. And my leader said to me one day, if you don't master speaking and doing presentations, your corporate career is over. And that was,
Wow, it's that important. I didn't realize.
well, to her it was, to
Yeah.
me, going, oh
Well, it
my God.
actually makes sense because, I mean, whether you're talking to your team or external people, having
Yes.
that power of being able to not, I mean, because my mouth goes to like cotton wool. I don't know what your nervous thing is, but I'm speaking like this. So it does take practice in order to lose those nerves.
It does. But what was happening was they were sending me on all these courses, Toastmasters and general manager programs where I was being videoed in presentations, and it all just made it worse.
Right.
And,
Oh,
so I thought, you know what, I've really got to take ownership for this because I want to be successful in corporate.
yeah.
And I thought, what is the one thing that is worse than speaking in public? This is what's going through my mind.
Yeah.
I thought, I've got to overcome this. So what is the one thing that is worse? And I thought, singing in public.
What did I miss that? What did you say?
Singing.
Oh my God, I'm with you. I'm with you.
So I took myself off without telling my leader to singing classes. And at the end of the 10 weeks, I had to do a solo performance and I had to do a group performance, which was a little bit easier than the solo performance.
Yeah.
But I loved it. I absolutely loved it. Can't sing a note for the life of me, but I absolutely loved it. And I did the next 10 weeks and then I did the next 10 weeks. And after every 10 weeks, you had to give a public performance. And by the end of those 10 weeks, I was very comfortable with, not so much comfortable singing in public, but I was certainly much more comfortable with speaking in public because I'd sung, and that was the most vulnerable way that I could ever be in public. And so that helped me overcome my fear.
That's an amazing story. And I think the other thing that you probably hadn't considered, and I hadn't, even though I should have, because I do work with a voice coach, is how that would have also taught you breathing and how to, open up your chest and be able to present yourself well, and a whole lot of other things that you don't really think about as a speaker.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. What was really interesting was the messages that I was giving was correct when I was terrified of speaking. I was doing all the preparation, but it was a delivery, and honestly, my knees were knocking at that time. But after the singing course, and I actually didn't tell my leader that I did the singing course. I did tell her afterwards because
what did she say when you told her afterwards?
She couldn't believe that I did the singing that I did.
But I think that's such a clever idea to go, what's your worst nightmare? Let me do that. And then anything else is going to be nowhere near as bad.
It recalibrated that fear.
Yeah.
So I still get a little bit nervous, but I know how to manage those nerves now. And I just think this is easier than singing in public.
Well, that is absolutely true. So one of the questions that I didn't tell you I was going to ask you, but I'm going to ask you anyway, is because I think it's really interesting for women to know how you find gigs, speaking gigs, whether they come to you because your profile's there, whether they're clients, or whether you're actively going out and reaching out to people. How do you get your gigs? Most of them.
Most of them is through my network, to be honest.
So word of mouth kind of recommendations and referrals.
Yeah. So I'll my network will reach out to me. Can you do something here? Or I might see an opportunity through my network.
Yes.
And I'll reach out to them. So I think that's really important that we ask. Sometimes we tend to sit back and we do wait for those recommendations or introductions to come forward, but ask.
Yeah, I think
you'll get is no.
And and now I want to take it a step further because I'm really interested. How do you get the international gigs? Is that mainly just because of what you do, or are you reaching out to organisers of events in the UK and America and saying, I'm very happy to speak?
So it's all about building your brand in the first instance. And so the first UK speaking that I did was for a conference that I'd organised. So one of the requirements for the sponsor was I'm going to do a 1-hour presentation. So the first thing is to build your brand as a speaker. And as I say, don't be afraid of reaching out. Don't be afraid of approaching the sponsor and saying, I want to
I'd
be
like
on
to speak.
stage, and start building brand awareness. And from that, and particularly in New York, where I'm traveling backwards and forwards regularly, I'm now getting approached. Hey, Trena, we see you on LinkedIn, and LinkedIn is amazing. We
It
see
is.
you're going to be in New York in March next year. Would you be okay, to do a speaking spot for us at this event? So the first thing is to build your brand, and you've got to push yourself out there to be able to build your brand as a speaker.
Yeah.
And then it goes from there. That's how
And
I do.
I like that you were saying, firstly, because I agree with you. I think LinkedIn is gold, but I had never thought to put out there that I'm about to go to somewhere, like I'll be in London in March next year. Is there anyone who'd like me to speak? And I've never thought about doing something
Yeah.
like that. So watch my LinkedIn. I might do one of those this year. Okay, so if people go to your talks, what would be two key takeaways or actionable items that people would walk away from one of your talks with?
They would be inspired to go global, and
Yeah.
why they should.
Right.
So
Okay.
out of Australia, we represent 0.33% of the total global population. We are a small market.
We are.
So for your business, if you're looking at global, you can't stay in Australia.
No.
So you'd be inspired by how you can go global. The second would be the cautionary tales about going global. So sharing what has worked and also the lessons of others that haven't worked. So you'd walk away with some very tangible outcomes and being able to apply that to your business.
Amazing. I can imagine how inspiring it is. Now, you have been speaking for a long time about this topic. Have you got a memorable talk that kind of stays in your mind that you would like to share with us? It can be anything. I mean, it could be a mistake or it could be a huge success. Just, I like stories.
Yeah, and this was a question that you posed to me.
Yeah, it's
Or
a curly one.
yeah, yeah, and I've thought a lot about this, and um, I think for me the one that resonates the most in my mind is I've enjoyed them all, but the one that really resonates for me as I reflect on them is the commencement speech that I did at UNSW last year.
Oh my goodness, Trina, that's huge.
And
I see those all over the reels, people doing commencement speeches.
and,
So tell me
and
about
it
it.
was, yeah, and Jules, it wasn't so much about the fact that I was, up there speaking to an auditorium full of students. It was the fact that I was being given the opportunity to speak to students who are just beginning their careers.
And tell them to think big.
Think big, but also I shared my story about fear of public speaking,
That's such a good story.
and just letting them know that things are not always rosy and gold when you first walk out into corporate world, or after you leave university, and being able to impart that knowledge and that experience, and that for me was the
A
bright
real
light for
standout. And
speaking.
did you get feedback from the students afterwards? Did they say, "Oh my God, I'd never thought of that, and I'm going
Yeah.
to learn public speaking now"?
Yeah, in fact, well, not so much about that, but I certainly got a lot of feedback from faculty about how authentic
Yeah.
the commencement speech was, that I brought in, my experiences, and they were very real and very authentic and supportive of the students as they were leaving the university and, going into their own careers for the first.
Oh, that's so great. So you've inspired a generation of New South Wales, you know, business wannabes, I guess, in another 3 to 5 years. That's brilliant. I think it's so important to have those role models. And because you've done it, it's so much easier for you to be able to explain it and for people to see that it's possible.
Yes, Yeah, exactly.
Brilliant. Okay, so I know you're on the womenspeakers.com.au platform. Thank you so much. But if if people want to book you, what are the best ways for them to be able to do that?
So people can connect with me on LinkedIn.
Yep.
But please put a note. Don't just send an invitation. Please put a note. That's always really helpful. So
Yeah.
LinkedIn, Trena with an E, Trena. But also my website. So the company website is
Yeah.
www.fdglobal.com.au, and you'll see a button on the top menu for speaking. So you can book me.
Okay, fantastic. And by the way, what does FD stand for?
Good question.
I'm nosy.
This is my second startup.
Right.
My very first startup was a business that I imported luxury handcrafted goods from Italy into Australia. And the name of the business was Formosa's Design, which Formosa's in Latin is beautiful. So
Right.
FD is a throwback to my very first startup.
I love that. I love that little connection as well. Listen,
Yeah.
Trina, you're amazing. I can imagine anyone listening, if you're looking for a speaker to really inspire women and men about thinking big and going overseas, then absolutely you're the woman. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this interview. It's been wonderful. And I loved getting to meet you for a little while anyway on Tuesday. So
Yeah.
thank you. It's been delightful.
Jules, thank you very much for the opportunity and all that you're doing to support women and speaking and networking. It's incredibly important, and you're an absolute superstar at doing it. So
Oh, thank you so much. If you have watched this show and enjoyed it, if you need a speaker, then please go to womenspeakers.com.au. You don't have to pay a commission. You can talk directly with the speaker and negotiate fees and all that sort of thing directly. You can also search by topic and location. You're also welcome to post into the LinkedIn group for Australian women speakers or the Facebook group. We've got over 2,000 women across those groups, all eager to speak. So particularly if you've got a smaller budget and you're reluctant to go to one of the bigger speakers, post something in there. And I think someone posted last month, and they got 79 responses. So you're not going to run out of speakers. And if you are a speaker or you would like to be, then please consider joining our groups and signing up on the directory and creating your profile piece. Thank you so much, Trina. Have a wonderful Christmas. I think this is the last one for the year. So it's been fabulous that I've been able to do it with you.
great. Thank you. Happy Christmas to everybody.
Absolutely.